Okay, we're good?
We're good.
Okay, well, Simcha Rothman, thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, everyone. As we start exploring what the meaning is of Yom HaZikaron, turning into Yom Haatzmaut, we are very honored to have with us member of Knesset, Simcha Rothman. Simcha, it's good to have you. We're very glad you're with us. Simcha, you and I go back a few years, but I don't think we've ever spoken in the context of our shul, Beth Jacob, here in Atlanta. So I'll just give you some quick background about the shul, and then you could maybe share a little bit about yourself before we begin this very important conversation. So Congregation Beth Jacob in Atlanta, where I serve as executive director, is the largest Orthodox synagogue in the Southeast, really, in the region. And we have over 500 families. We're almost 80 years old, which means that we've been around since the early 1940s, longer than the modern state of Israel. And our shul has always had a very, very strong relationship with the modern state of Israel. Over the years, there were times when our shul had the highest aliyah rate of any shul in North America. There was a point in the early 1970s when our shul was the first shul in North America to mortgage the building so that we could buy Israel bonds at a time when it was very much needed. And more recently, we broke a Guinness World Record just a few years ago for Israel's 70th. We built the world's largest cookie flag mosaic. I don't know if I ever told you about this, but we built a giant Degel Yisrael out of 117,000 cookies.
Wow.
If you look it up on the Guinness World Records, you'll see that that the record is held by the Atlanta Jewish community and the state of Israel. Actually, I think I have the official Guinness certificate right here. Right, if you look at it, I had to get a special letter from Ambassador Ron Dermer in order for Israel to be listed as the record holder. So Israel is very close to our heart here in Atlanta, and we want to talk about Jewish independence. What does it mean? You know, a lot of countries are independent. There are 180 plus countries in the world, but there's only one Jewish state. So first of all, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we could launch into this conversation. Go ahead.
Okay, so as you said, I'm a member of Knesset and also a member of the Judicial Selection Committee and representative of the Knesset in the Judicial Selection Committee in Israel. I'm part of the religious Zionism party, Betzalel Smotrich party. Sadly, we're in that position today, but I hope it's going to change. And I came in to be involved in public life through an organization called Meshilut, the Israeli Movement for Governability and Democracy, basically trying to reform Israeli judiciary and the connection between the judiciary and other branches of government. I started it in 2012. I was the legal advisor of the organization. And actually the run into Knesset was continuing the work from inside politics after for many years of working on this issue from outside of politics, and I try to continue the work to change Israeli judiciary, but also the challenges that the state of Israel faces when you're a Knesset member. You cannot be a single issue person. You need to be involved with more issues. So a lot of immigration issues, a lot of policy, and all kinds, because really we can't have the option to focus on one issue. So every Knesset member has to deal with all issues basically. So that's what I do today. Baruch Hashem.
Excellent. Wonderful. So you're well positioned to answer this question. Actually, I don't want to talk about Israeli politics this week just yet. I want to get to that. But zooming out, right? I think your parents are American, if I'm not mistaken.
So I think the right context in this. My family made Aliyah from the U.S. Not so long ago, a little bit before your shul started, in 1910.
Wow.
So my family originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and they made Aliyah in 1910, way before.
It's unusual.
Yeah, even before the it was during the Ottoman Empire time, and they moved to Yerushalayim and then to Tel Aviv, and basically we started. So my family is for many years in Israel. I have more recent back and forth family. Made Aliyah, came back. Some of the other branches of family. I'm doing this Zoom now from my cousin's house in Lakewood, but this we are a lot. I have family and also in the U.S. and also in Israel. Also, my wife's family, almost all the family made Aliyah from Chicago. So I know the experience of Aliyah, especially from the U.S. on many levels of my family.
Beautiful. Okay, so when you talk about Yom Haatzmaut as a celebratory day, right, as a day that we're commemorating something that's historic that happened, let's start with the very positive. What does that mean to you as someone who came from families that were in other parts of the world and finally came back to Israel? What does that mean to you?
So I have to say that for many years, I think that especially in the religious Zionist group in Israel, you could hear two distinct voices how to treat the state of Israel. One was the Rav Kook approach, and one was Rabbi Soloveitchik approach, and they're both merged into Israeli Dati Leumi society.
Sure.
So some people would say, oh, this is the state of Israel is actually that's actually the Geula right here. This is the Mashiach is coming. This is the term of Rav Kook words is Yesod Kisei Hashem Ba'olam Medinat Israel, the state of Israel. That's like the holy state of Israel. And I think that the more, I would say, down-to-earth approach by Rabbi Soloveitchik was, we are in times, you cannot deny the Geula aspects of the state of Israel, but it doesn't have to be the state of Israel. It's the state of Israel that Jews came back to their homeland after. It's enough miracle without adding the superlative of Yesod Kisei Hashem Ba'olam, the founding stone of Hashem's chair in the world. It's enough of a miracle by itself.
Sure.
You can celebrate it by the fact that we actually live the prophecies. You don't need to. You can look at it in a very down to earth point of view and still be amazed that you're reading that the Torah, you're reading the Nevi'im, and you're seeing it's happening in front of your eyes. It's enough as it is. So I'm somewhere in between. I think the family, my family, that we came from as exactly that, like that. We came to the land of Israel way before there was a state of Israel. So the state of Israel is not our. It's not the state of Israel that brought us. We brought.
Very good.
So that's the way we see the actual redemption, the actual kibbutz galuyot by the act of regular, ordinary people. Some of them decided to move from Cleveland to Israel 110 years ago.
Amazing. Really, really amazing. So all of that is to celebrate, of course, what we have, which is a tremendous gift. The modern state of Israel is something that didn't exist for 1900 years, and we're all living that miracle today. On the other hand, and I really hate being negative at all, the current Israeli government, the current makeup of the Israeli government for the first time since its founding depends on a non-Jewish entity to ensure its existence. Does that make you in any way say that maybe the state of Israel today is not as independent as it should be as a Jewish state? Is it not fulfilling its intent?
Of course, of course, the current affairs, the idea, and it's not only about being a non-Jewish party, it's about
Of course.
anti-Zionist party and and terror supporting party. So it's a big, but a thing that you must, and you know, I think that's something of part of the process that I described before. If you look at the state of Israel as a holy state of Israel, then you might have harder times adjusting to this. That you cannot separate. It's harder for you to say, "Oh, the government is doing a very bad thing, and the coalition is terrible, but the state is excellent." Because if the state is holy, it's harder to grasp what's happening. How can you have this kind of government? If you look at it as what a miracle, the Jewish people came back to Israel, to the land of Israel, and they can even do stupid things, but it's their own stupid things that they're doing. That's the miracle. So that's the problem. That you give people the option to decide. Sometimes they choose badly, but the mere idea of the fact that the Jewish people have a choice and we can take down this government as soon as we want, and we're not dependent on some other nation to decide for us what kind of government we will live under. This is the making of this, I would say, the stupidity of some Jews.
Sure.
That we have. It's not. We are not under any other people's stupidity. It's our own.
Got it.
We should be happy on that, right?
Every family has their different personalities. Every
Yes.
mishpacha has that. Okay, beautiful. On the topic of hostile Israeli Arabs, I know that you yourself, if I'm not mistaken, you moved not too long ago to Lod, which has been the site of a lot of friction between Jewish community and Israeli Arabs. Actually, right after the riots last year there, our Arshel actually sponsored a Brit Milah, a beautiful community celebration in the Mechina in Lod for the community. So we have a close connection with the community there, and it sounds like things are calm in Lod and in other cities. Is that the case?
Calmer, yes.
Yeah.
But still, I got the message after Shabbat that during the Shabbat some ulpana from Afra came and they were kicked out of the place that they were supposed to be for Shabbat because the Arabs politicians would not allow for them to be there. The tension, of course, exists, and I think that Lod is actually where now it became the test case. We moved to Lod again because it was my wife heard that 400 families left the city, so we came to support and make it strong. We're soon going to go back. We came for a year, like a shlichut, to come from Lod. We're living in Pnei Kedem, which is another place where the state of Israel challenged the fact of we're not taking sovereignty over the land of Israel from different reasons, but I think that the challenge of the Arabs really don't want us anywhere in the land of Israel.
Sure.
So for many years, some people would say, "Oh, it's about Judea and Samaria. It's about settlements. It's about the occupation. It's all kind of excuses for the hatred from the Arabs." I think last year events convinced more people that there is no such a thing as a green line. The Arabs that do not want us, it is the same Arabs that do not want us in Hebron, they don't want us in Bethel, they don't want us in Jerusalem, they don't want us in Pnei Kedem, and they don't want us in Lod, in Tel Aviv, in Yafo, in Haifa, everywhere. So I think it brought a more clearer view of what it's all about with Israeli Arabs. Again, some people did not get the message, as you had said before, that it's not about and actually I just recently saw that the same Mansour Abbas, the head of Ram, that quoted in Hebrew and maybe in English also that he wants to deal only with civil issues, just recently interviewed in Arabic and said there is no distinction between civil issues and national issues. They don't make this distinction. We shouldn't give them the excuse of making this distinction. They do not. And it's the challenge that the state of Israel and mostly the people of Israel, it's very hard to believe that people want to kill you just because you're a Jew. So it's the anti-Semitism has many ways and has many people see it in different places around the world. In America, of course, but in America, it's the best. I think the least around the world, but in other places around the world, the anti-Semitism has many shapes and forms. In Israel, it's the fact that people believe the Jews cannot live in the land of Israel. So
Beautiful.
And so people don't want to accept it, and it's more of a work that we need to do on ourselves to accept the fact that this is the case. We have to deal with it and not to live in this self-denial.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Very nice. So, our community is, we're big supporters of the modern state of Israel. We believe that also Torah Yisrael is a very important, the critical recipe, ingredient for our national identity. You and I didn't discuss this in advance, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there like your go-to Devar Torah on the importance, the centrality of the land of Israel to Jewish identity that you think about when you're in the Knesset, when you're legislating, when you're working on it, when you put on your religious identity combined with your identity as a legislator? What do you think about?
So I think that. And I spoke about it a little bit in my first speech in the Knesset about this issue. I think that we need to make the modern state of Israel. We need to make it more the ideal of the Jewish state. It is a state for the Jews. It says that it is a Jewish state, but it's a declaration that we need to fulfill. And in order for the state for the Jews, or the homeland of the Jewish people, to become a Jewish state, and the Jewish state is a term that some people would say, oh, that's a theocracy. We're afraid of theocracy. We don't want theocracy. But a Jewish state is not the same thing as a state for the Jews. It's not the same thing as the homeland of the Jewish people. It's a Jewish state that is a continuum. They said the more you use the term many times when you said the modern Jewish state. You're implying that the word Jewish states in the past and the modern Jewish state is like the next level, or it's the new embodiment of the old Jewish state. And in order for that to be, you need to be connected to the roots. In my speech, I quoted Ben Gurion. He said, "I do not want a Western democracy." He said, "I want Jewish democracy with prophetic ethics," and that was Ben Gurion words. He says, I want the ethics of the prophets and a Jewish democracy, which is not the same as Western democracy. It's different. In what ways? That's for us to figure out. And that is actually a question that many people ask me when I'm talking to American audience. When will Israel have a constitution, right? That's the question you usually get, especially because I'm a lawyer and I deal with the judiciary. When Israel will have a constitution. Now, Ben Gurion was the one who objected, who said, I don't want to have a constitution. And the reason he said, some would, if you were cynical, you would say he did not want a constitution because constitution limits the government and he didn't want to be limited, right? So that's the cynical way to look at it. But I prefer, especially on Yom Haatzmaut, I prefer to not be cynical about what the explanation that he gave. And the explanation that he gave, he said, we cannot set a constitution for the state of Israel because the state of Israel is not ours. We are, at the time, he said, we are 600,000 people at a certain point in history. The majority of the Jewish people is not here. The majority of the Jewish people, also on the space and also on time, is not here. And if we set in stone our values as a constitution, who are we to decide for the Jewish people what are his values for the years to come? So it's the idea of not having a constitution, but listening to what the people, the nation of the Israeli nation wants at any certain point of time. I think that's the real Jewish thing to do. You cannot. We are a free nation. You cannot put cables on our hand in the shape of a constitution that will hold us to what we thought yesterday. So the Dvar Torah, if that's what you refer to, is I use it, especially now we are leaving the months of Nisan and moving to the month of, but we're still under the impression of Pesach, and the Israeli nation is the ever renewing nation. You are never, every year you're resetting everything, and you start from scratch every year. And the best example for that is the bread. You are not eating the same bread you ate last year. You killed all the yeast in the beginning, and you are waiting for the new Omer. Now in the time of the Omer, you're waiting for the new grain for the next year. You don't eat from the new, you wait and then you eat only from the new grain. You don't eat from the new grain before. Now it's new year, now you eat the new grain. You're renewing every year, you're going back to the source, and you say, this is the bread our father ate when they left Egypt. Every year, you're in a circle. So the ever renewing nation cannot have a set in stone set of rules. We will forever be smarter tomorrow than we were yesterday. So we are not willing, we want to continue our heritage of ever renewing nation, which is the contradiction, especially, the conservative, what do you conserve? We conserve the act of renewing ourselves. So that's and I think that's the harder thing to do, and that's the reason why the Jewish nation does not want a constitution. And actually, when you look at what kind of government the Jewish nation wanted, and you read the book of Shmuel, and he tells them, you don't need a king. Hashem is your king. You don't need the structure, the set in stone structure of a king. He will only put restraints on you. He will take your children. He will take your money. He will use it to his own benefit. You need to be led directly by Hashem. What does it mean? It means the almost anarchic way of democracy. That's the original way that the Jewish people rule themselves. That was the longest time that the Jewish people had a state. It was a state of in a state that it was almost close to an anarchy. So you need to have a structure, of anarchy. That's only the Jewish people can think of.
Very nice. That is absolutely beautiful. In closing, do you have a message for us Jews in the diaspora? But I don't want you to hold back and think that you shouldn't hit us hard with some strong tochacha, some musar. A lot of times Israelis are hold back a little bit. What can we be working on?
What kind of Israelis did you meet? That I don't know them. I need to meet them.
Okay, some Americans are sensitive about this.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is our community isn't. We want to hear. We want to hear what you think. What can we be doing better?
So first, you said you are involved in Israel, in what's happening in Israel. Be more. Again, as my personal experience from the branches of my family, the branches that either made Aliyah or were deeply connected to Israel in other ways, stay Jews. The people who were not connected to the land of Israel, again, even before the state of Israel, but of course now to the land of Israel and to the state of Israel, their connection with Judaism went away. I think, of course, I think that Aliyah is important. Of course, I think that people can have, especially today, it's a little bit easier to make Aliyah. A lot of people are working in Zoom. Sure. A lot of people are traveling globally. But I think that being connected, being listening, tuning in to what's happening in the state of Israel, in the land of Israel, I think it's the connection to the nation, because you can't, and that's the idea basically behind my party, Eretz Israel, Am Israel, and Torat Israel. They're all combined. You cannot separate them. So some people try to connect the Am with the Torah and they forget the land. Some people trying to connect the Am and the land and they forget the Torah. Some people care only about the Am and not about the Torah or the land. I think we see around us that you cannot forget any of those three important branches. You need to combine them all together. So if you make Aliyah, of course, that's the best. That's of course the best. But to send your kids, to send to come visit, to have a home away from home, it's a level. I have to say, during the Corona, I got a lot of complaints from people that said, "You're telling us that Israel is your home away from home, and when COVID started, you blocked us from coming in." So one kind of answer that people said, make Aliyah, you can get in whenever you want. But I did not. I did not take this approach. I said, and I thought of, and slowly we changed a little bit the policy about that. Some of it because of my pressure, but I said Aliyah is a process. It's not a one thing. It's not a one cut. Some people, they are planning on retiring in Israel. So. Sure. So they are in the middle of making Aliyah. It can take them 20 or 30 years. And my father was a shliach sechnut in England. So I know a little bit about the complication. It's not easy. And I know my family, some of them made Aliyah, some of them returned. My wife's family who came back and returned. It's a process. It's a conversation. It's a connection. But to keep the connection alive, I think it's the most important thing, because otherwise you're losing touch with yourself, you're losing touch with your nation, you're losing touch with the Torah, you're losing touch with the land. And so keeping in touch is very important. And of course, some Americans hold back on being involved in Israeli politics. And they say it's not for us to interfere in Israeli politics. It has some approach, it has some sense in this approach, but it also doesn't, because it's your country. You need to help us make Israel a place that you want to come.
Very good.
Because and sadly, I have to say, most Americans and most people from abroad that are involved in Israeli politics are from the extreme left, and they're doing it for a whole different reasons. And they want to shape Israel to be different than what it is today, so it will be more of problematic, take more of the problems of the world and import it or export it to Israel.
Sure.
I think that people that are invested in Israel be more Jewish state, more connected to the Jewish people, more the homeland of the Jewish people, they don't feel enough at home to try to help that. I think they should. I think they should help. I think they should have their voices be heard, at least give balance the other forces that are working.
Got it. Very, very nice. Well said. Beautiful. Well, Simcha, thank you very, very much for your time. We appreciate it. We hope that next time you'll be in person in Atlanta, hopefully on your next trip to the United States, and we'll be able to host you here. Okay, excellent. Wishing you Chag Haatzmaut Sameach. And thank you for all of your insight and your input, and for all of your hard work on a lot of important issues. We appreciate your friendship.
Thank you for having me, and Chag Sameach.
Much appreciated. Okay.